Hey everyone, welcome to Cloud Management Monthly. I'm Steve Athanas, VMUG president, and your guest today. And I owed a couple of guys a favor, so here I am. And now your hosts, Matt and Dan.
All right, wait, here we are. We started. I can't believe this is happening. This is the show.
It's happening.
It is happening. It is happening. Welcome everybody to Cloud Management Monthly. Man, I'm so excited to be doing this podcast with you, Matt. You know, it's we've been looking for something to collaborate with, and finally we kind of found something that we're hooking up together. And this, I think, is going to be a really great show for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's awesome getting to work with you finally. I mean, I've been watching the VM for quite a while here, and yeah, finally making this happen. I think we're kind of in a unique place to be talking about. The topic here is obviously cloud management, and we're both working for VMware. We're both completely immersed in cloud here. I'm actually working for the cloud management business unit, so this is just kind of seems like a perfect fit for you and I here to be spinning up a podcast on exactly this topic.
Yeah, I agree. It's cloud management's always been something that's been kind of something I've been involved in, and now in my role as a core SE, at VMware, I work with lots of different customers, and cloud management is something they're all trying to figure out and how it fits into their environment. So if we can, help people out a little bit, help a little bit of an understanding, have some fun, I think this will be a great show for everybody.
Exactly. And, honestly, when we were talking, what should be our first topic? And really, first topic should be, what is cloud management, right? What does it actually mean? And, I've been kind of thinking about it a little bit lately, too, as far as, well, is there really a differentiator between what is cloud management and what is IT, right? Because most everything's running on some sort of cloud, private, public, and so forth. So if we were to draw a Venn diagram of cloud management and IT, I think there'd be a very strong intersection between the two, right? Because you're still thinking about, how do I serve my customers? Where am I going to run my apps, right? Am I going to have enough capacity to make sure that I'm serving my business as best as possible, and that users are able to run the software that they need, customers are able to run the software that they need to, continue driving my business, right?
Yeah, and I hope as we go through the podcast series, we start to learn a little bit more about the individual components of what a cloud management platform is and what cloud management means to different people through some interviews and guests. And I think it's every customer I talk to, it means a little bit different, right? Everybody's trying to figure out their own cloud strategy, and where does cloud management and where does a cloud management platform fit within that strategy. Some of my customers are very interested in the automation piece of it, right? Some customers are interested in having an environment they can manage multiple public clouds, right? And be able to keep the same consistency and same policy and same, everything is consistent among all the different public clouds, and not have anyone have to think about it. So I'm really looking forward to digging into the topic as we go along here, and really kind of learning through our guests and through our discussions of really what kind of cloud management's going to do for us and for everybody listening. So Matt, tell me, what's your experience with cloud management? I know you are technical marketing for the cloud management business unit at VMware. What are the types of things that you're working on day to day to help customers understand what cloud management is, or pieces of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, cloud management's such an important thing for VMware that we actually have a business unit dedicated to it, right? So I actually work for the cloud management business unit, part of our technical marketing team focused on vRealize operations. So for anybody who's not familiar with VMware's cloud management business unit, we are basically the BU behind the whole vRealize suite, right? So we have things like automation, making deployments a whole lot easier, operations, making sure that you get enough capacity, and that again, you're serving your business as best as possible, and that you can resolve issues as quickly as possible. vRealize Network Insight, vRealize Log Insight, right? For a lot of again, just kind of management of just making sure that you're serving those applications as best as possible. So been in this role for about a year and so forth. Before that, I was a technical account manager, so doing a lot of consulting for VMware's healthcare customers, helping them to really kind of manage things as best as possible, taking things from doing spreadsheet capacity planning to using more modern tools make their jobs a whole lot easier, right? So able to kind of draw from previous experience as a systems administrator to help our customers again, just be as successful as possible. So moving a little bit closer to the product just kind of was sort of a dream for me, to be honest. So how about yourself, Dan?
Yeah, my entry into cloud management was through vRealize Operations Manager. Before joining VMware, I was always a customer. And the first day at my last job before coming to VMware, I was kind of handed a box of junk, right? And inside that box of junk was vCops, right? The old version of it. And my boss said, who happened to be a good friend of mine, I had worked for him before at a previous job, he's like, hey, we need to figure out what we're going to do with this stuff, right? So I really didn't know much about capacity management. I didn't know much about the product. I had always been more of an infrastructure, VMware, working with VMware from an infrastructure standpoint. So I started to reinstall and get things up to date and slowly learn what I was doing with it. And then I took training after I had all of that up and running. And that's when it really kind of clicked how important it was for the organization and how important it was to understand what our capacity needs were. We were doing everything, kind of on spreadsheet and kind of figuring it out. We knew what our run rate was. We knew how many VMs we, decommissioned every month. We knew how many blades we had to purchase, but we really didn't have anything to verify that information. So we ended up kind of taking VROPS and making it really a core application to our capacity management team. And then we started to slowly get it spread out across the organizations and start to pull metrics in for other, from other groups and other systems, disparate systems. And somewhere during that time, I really liked the software. I never thought in my life that I would say I really loved a piece of software, but because I was using it day to day, I really ended up really liking the software. And now in my current role, right, I'm able to work with my customers to help them understand what cloud management does for them, how it can help them reach their goals and solve their business needs through all the great components that are built within that cloud management platform.
Yeah, I'm with you. It was a complete surprise being somebody who just wanted to build infrastructure and all of that sort of stuff. And reports are kind of boring. And then all of a sudden, it just clicked. It's like, this is what we got to do.
Yeah, the first super metric I ever did, I was like, what is this? This is amazing, right? It took me months to figure out what the hell it really was. And then once I finally did one, I was like, oh, I get it. So every time I started working with it, I had these kind of epiphanies of, oh, I can use it for this. I can use it for that. Right. And then, and that's just one component of the suite.
Exactly. And I mean, it's so exciting to finally be able to take some of, what we've learned and more importantly, find out what the community has learned, people from around the community, both within VMware and people who are running it, right. Who are actually in the trenches, actually doing the work here. So this podcast is really going to be focused on kind of sharing those stories from not just the VMware perspective, right? I mean, we're a little biased. We work for the company.
For sure.
So we want to make sure that we're going to hear from other people. And in fact, our first guest today is none other than the Steve Athanas, the president of the VMware User Group and also associate CIO for UMASS Lowell. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's great to be on the show. I've been a fan for a long time, this being your first episode. Chalk me up as your longest term fan.
Well, thank you for that. So, we are the Cloud Management Monthly podcast, and what we wanted to do is have you on the show today and really get your perspective at your level within UMass Lowell of kind of what is cloud management, what does it mean at your level, what are the types of things that really kind of matter to you?
So cloud management to me is about aligning our cloud needs with the business needs, right? And those, it gets easy when you're in IT to start getting myopic on the technology and thinking about, how am I getting resources here? Or how am I getting network here? Or how am I getting transport across? But really what it is aligning what you're doing in the cloud. By the way, that's not really a lot different than your own infrastructure that you have. And by the way, I'm using cloud in probably the improper term. it's public cloud, private cloud. It's aligning those to the business needs. Now that could be that you need a ton of elasticity because you have a really cyclical work pattern, right? And it could be Q4 is gangbusters for you and Q2 is really down, and so that flexibility and elasticity is really important. It could be that the on-demand piece is really important, that you're provisioning new things really fast. You need to get a really quick time to market. So managing the cloud, to me anyways, just from my perspective, is about making sure that your investments and your infrastructure and your partnerships are in line with what the business needs.
Now you're in a very unique position because you've come up from the ranks, right? You've done help desk, you've been the sysadmin, you've worked all your way all the way up. So kind of from your perspective, you've already had hands-on with really everything in the stack. So how into the weeds do you get into this?
So, it depends. Sometimes, and a lot of this is just personal prerogative. Sometimes I get really interested and I'll get in with my teams and we'll be looking at, stuff at a very granular level. And other times, frankly, one of the hardest things I think about having that career progression is knowing when to back off. So the first time, I was a skip level manager and there was something that needed to be done that absolutely should have been done at the engineer level. And I was like, oh yeah, let me hop in and do that. And they were like, well, I guess I can provision your account to do that, but you don't have creds to get in there. And I'm like, hey, why not? Oh yeah, there's absolutely no reason for me to be doing that whatsoever. So the important thing for me is knowing when you're talking shop and getting in and being a springboard for somebody, or whiteboarding stuff, or being a soundboard, not a springboard, being a soundboard for somebody, and when you're giving them freedom to explore and grow and learn on their own. And that to me is the most important part of tech leadership, is giving your team the latitude to grow and learn so that they have the opportunity that you did. Because if you're constantly feeding somebody the answers, they're never going to grow to fill in the space that you theoretically should have left behind when you got promoted.
So what does the stack look like at UMass Lowell? Like what does your cloud management stack look like? What are you building on? What's the technology that you're driving today at UMass?
Yeah, so no surprise here, right? We're primarily a VMware shop, and so that is we really run our VMware stack in sort of two flavors. One is for our end user compute VDI environment, right? And then our other is for our production and research systems. And those, by the way, are completely different. So at the fundamental layer, it's vSphere 6, 7 on both of them. We haven't made the jump to 7 yet. Don't beat me up. But we haven't. But we're running vSphere 6, 7 on both of them. But they're configured radically differently, which is I think one of the cool things about vSphere is how malleable it can be and how you can take the same code base and make it work completely differently based on your use case. So that's that. But we also have a pretty sizable presence in the public cloud. So we are an AWS customer, and an Azure customer. We're probably about 70-30 Azure over AWS right now. And that's frankly because of when we talk about that business alignment, a lot of the apps that we're using were front end or back ended with SQL Server, and so we're consuming that SQL resource through Azure, right?
And how important is it to choose a cloud management platform that kind of goes across all your environments? Have you guys looked at something that can manage your AWS infrastructure, your on-premises infrastructure?
Yeah, so I'm going to have to answer that theoretically, because in practice, we're doing a lot of that manually right now, which is a pain point, right? The reason we haven't gone more forward in that is exactly the reason you think so. Public higher education, budget constraints, right? And that stuff is, sometimes you're making the trade-off between expense, capital outlay, and labor outlay. And we're on the side of labor right now. We're doing it with people and not software so much. But the importance of that as you scale up more into, I would say more areas of an environment, as you have an on-premises cloud or a private cloud, and then you've got some public cloud, or maybe you have what we do, by the way, we share a cloud structure with other campuses. So we call it DCO, data center optimization, but we have multiple UMass campuses that share a facility in Shrewsbury and all run on a stack there. So we've got these multiple pockets. Having one thing to manage those and have visibility into it is really important. And that, frankly, is one of the projects that we're really excited about over the next probably 6 to 12 months.
So that's pretty interesting, where you're actually sharing a site amongst many different campuses. Now, how do you decide who gets, how big of a slice of the pie of that data center?
Yeah. So originally, so it's actually funny you say that, right? When we started this, we basically co-funded. I want to make sure I don't step on something I shouldn't say, but we basically co-funded an environment and we split it quarterly, right? And not quarterly like, first 3 months of the year, but in quarters, like 25%.
25%.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly. So we split it in quarters and like that was it. And it was kind of like a hard-walled environment. Like I and Lowell couldn't use something that, say, the med school wasn't using. There was no flexibility there. Our newer environment that we just launched up does do that, and so it is chargeback based on consumption, right? Which is one of the core tenets of cloud-based is you pay for what you use. And by the way, that to me is a really fundamental principle of technology in a business setting, is that if you decouple cost and consumption, you make really bad decisions. So as an example, we try to bring all of our infrastructure decisions, not like individual infrastructure decisions, but like the impact of that back to line of business owners, and show back, in some cases charge back what that is, because it's surprising how often you hear somebody say, hey, I need X, Y, and Z, and you come back and you be like, great, that'll cost $50,000 for 2 years of it, and they're like, this project is not worth anywhere near $50,000. And you're like, oh, okay. Well, then let's resize what we were doing to meet what the demand is. Like, what is it worth? And then, there you start making better decisions. Otherwise, you're throwing a ton of IT spend after something that might not have a whole lot of benefit. Classic example from days gone by, but in my environment, we one time had a project to take our old VAX system and, migrate all that data into a nice, clean, new relational database. And it was going to cost something like, say $25,000 or something. And we were like, well, what's the value of that data? And they're like, well, every year we get about $1,000 out of it. Maybe we shouldn't spend that money on that project and instead just forego the $1,000 a year. Oh yeah, totally great. So that's the kind of thing. I know we're not talking about cloud there, but those kind of cost and consumption models, I think, really matter. That wasn't really consumption, but I think you follow what I'm saying.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. So, from your perspective, okay, you mentioned obviously budgets, you've got staffing that, you need to consider when making decisions. What about compliance, security, so forth? It's really kind of a mixed bag of a lot of things to weigh in. So what do you kind of focus on first?
So a university is this is why I like working at a university setting, is we have all of that. So, unlike a manufacturing firm that I used to work at, back in the day, manufacturing firms don't have to worry about HIPAA data, right? They don't have to worry about FERPA data. We have to worry about both, right? So FERPA is Federal Education Records Protection Act, right? That's applies to educational environments, and we have a responsibility and some compliance around how we handle those educational records. But we also have a counseling center and a health center. Well, that's HIPAA data. Clearly, right? So we have to manage that separately. So, compliance is always going to, I don't want to say drive the discussion, but it's almost like a veto thing, right? Like, you can have the best design in the world, and if it doesn't meet your compliance needs, that compliance trumps it and vetoes it, right? So you just got to be really careful about not getting too far ahead of compliance and making sure you're designing with that in mind. For me, I think you asked, and I'm sorry I meandered, but you said, what's the most important piece? For me, it comes down to two things, which is it meeting the need? Is it serving the function? And is it within budget? Because budget matters. Being a public entity, we're always looking to make sure we're making the best value out of the decisions that we make. So budget is going to lead a lot of the time. But sometimes, a great example is, could we have done our VDI environment less expensively than we did? Would it have been nearly as good for our end users, our students, our most important customers? No. So, we erred on the side of a nicer side, added GPU support, that kind of thing, that made it a better environment at additional cost, but with great value.
Yeah, and when you talked about compliancy and selecting a cloud, how much did that play into which public cloud or what public clouds that you guys were going to accept? I see that a lot when I talk with my customers, especially those that have, whether it's government data or personal identifiable information, that really kind of leads their cloud decision in which platform they fit on. How much did that play into what you guys decided?
Yeah, so it's a big piece of it, and for I got to be a little bit careful here, but some of the research that we have has some pretty tight constraints around it and is funded by different government entities. That clearly has to be handled in a far different way than, say, our and this is a real thing, our Minecraft server, right? We have a Minecraft server for students. It's actually really cool. Our students got together when we all had to leave campus because of COVID, and they were like, "We missed the campus. Can we build it in Minecraft?" And I was like, "I can't wait to get audited for a Minecraft server charge."
Right.
Yeah, they're like, "What is this?" Like, well, trust me, it was for educational use. But no, that is a very different data classification than some of the research data we have, than some of the HIPAA data we have. So that plays in, again, in a lot of ways. It's like a yellow flag or a veto, right? You can find an amazing cloud provider out there, and if they can't meet your needs for HIPAA or FERPA compliance, you cannot consider them. So in our case, when I said that we're a little heavier into Azure than AWS, some of that is historical because Azure had again, budget and compliance coupled together here had a better, for us, we were able to get a more cost-effective way to ensure that data was held on servers within the United States, et cetera.
Right.
So to answer your question, it matters a lot, right? It's not the only, it's not the only factor, but it's almost a binary factor. It either is or it is not, and then that trumps a lot of other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then kind of tertiary to that, would skill set on your team weigh into that? If, say, it's neck and neck between Azure and AWS.
Yeah,
right.
Of course it would. I mean, if it's neck and neck in it, yes. But I'll tell you that when we started making investments in AWS and Azure, we had experience in neither. So it wasn't so much what our skill set was, it was how fast we thought we could learn that skill set. So interestingly, right, that was one of the few times that how good are the online and self-paced learning tools for the cloud? Like, how good are they? Because our team is going to need to leverage those, because we weren't going to invest in a ton of like in-person classroom training. So it was like, okay, how good are that? And I mean, frankly, both offer really good options for that, and others do too. I'm not trying to knock it. I'm not trying to trash talk like GCP or anything. They've got good stuff too. But.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I mean, certainly there is. There's a lot about providing a consistent operating environment, right? That way you can kind of build on the skill set that you already have. When you look at something for cloud management, how you're managing these multiple clouds, how important, or is that important for your teams to have an environment that is consistent, so that it makes it very seamless and easy for them to do any migration or skill set? Where did that kind of come into the thought process when you guys made a decision on going native AWS, native Azure, versus some of the other offerings like VMC and AWS or Azure VMware Solutions?
Yeah, so I mean, when we made our initial investment in these, VMC and AWS wasn't the thing, so we kind of predated that. So some of this stuff is historical, right? Like a lot of these applications have a life cycle of 10 years or more, and so they just kind of stay resident. The thing that I was thinking about as you were talking was the importance of that consistency is big, but I think about it in different terms, and maybe it's just because of sort of my experience and sort of what I'm thinking about and looking at is it gives me a lower chance of getting locked into a contract with a provider that I don't want to get locked into, right? So everybody knows that when you build your app specific to, and I'll use AWS as an example, but if I build my app specific to that, like getting that app out of AWS onto any other public cloud is going to be really, really tough. Whereas if I have that cloud management layer that I can do it on, I can move that a lot more seamlessly and not have to be like, oh no, my contract expired and I'm renegotiating at these astronomical rates, which drive down the overall ROI on my application. That, I think, and this is not, I think it's intentional, right? This is exactly the same conversation we were having 10 years ago about whether I want to be on vendor X or vendor Y's servers, because I don't want to get locked into them.
Right.
And vSphere solved that problem for me. And now it's the same problem, but instead of talking about discrete pieces of hardware, I'm talking about different surfaces for compute.
Right.
Which is, that I think that conversation has been happening in different waves over the last, 20 years or something. And IT is trying to get out of that, like, I'm locked into this solution forever. I think by nature of IT, we don't want to be locked into things, right?
Right. Do you think that there's something to be said for a platform though? Like, I certainly understand being vendor locked in, but it seems like when you're choosing a platform, right, there's a lot of integration points, security's kind of built in. How heavy does picking something that fits within your platform rather than something that's bolted on weigh into a decision when you guys select software? Or are you more willing to say, hey, this seems to be what most colleges or educational groups are using? How much does the platform choice fit into your decisions?
Yeah, a lot of times, Dan, it's actually those decisions get driven by faculty needs, right? So, unlike I'll go back to my sort of, manufacturing corporate background, unlike that where you're deciding sort of, in IT, you're deciding you're the subject matter expert. Where is it best going to go? Very often we have researchers that come to us and say, I need to run X simulation on X app, which is, already integrated into X cloud. Can you just run it in there? It's really hard to have a conversation with that, person who, has, in some cases more than one PhD and is a leader in their field and say like, well, have you considered running it on a different environment? Yeah, I think it matters more at scale. So one of the things that's interesting about a university is you tend to run a lot of things at smaller scale than less things at bigger scale. So for instance, we have a large ERP system, just like every other, company does, but then, instead of having, I'm trying to think of a good example, like, instead of email is consistent too, right? But instead of having, one or two apps that everybody uses for business, like, like Salesforce is a good example. Like how many companies, everybody's in Salesforce all day long. Well, we have Salesforce, but it's in a more isolated area, right? It's to wrap around our students. And by the way, it's doing great things for us. CRM has actually changed how we think about serving our students, but that is, for a point there. So I guess the struggle that I have answering that question is that a lot of our stuff is at smaller scale, and we're not running it at a scale where we would see the massive efficiencies from doing that, which by the way aren't theoretical, they're real. It's just in my day-to-day job, it's a little bit more ad hoc.
Right, understand.
So I guess one last question kind of on the topic too would be for anybody listening who's kind of interested in how they can help their business, help IT, so forth. What are some of the things that they can do to sort of help with, making these decisions that are best for the business?
So I think, that a lot of times comes down to relationships and strategy between the line of business owners and your IT leaders, right? I think the best organizations, IT is at the table when we're talking strategy and when we're talking what our goals are, because IT plays into those. In the ones that are doing it, I would say more poorly. Unfortunately, I'm not an organization that does this. IT is a cost center or an afterthought, right? And it's like, okay, you guys can go build that or you can manage it, but really your goal is to manage the number down as tight as possible versus, hey, how are we an enabler of innovation? How are we a strategic asset to move the organization forward? So it's the difference between tending to the coal fires and just making that be seamless and integrating the next piece of technology into your core business. So I think to answer your question more succinctly, it's about having those relationships and being able to have those conversations at the genesis and not be brought in later. So I think that's how you help from both sides. And by the way, that is incumbent upon IT just as much as it is line of business users. You have to be assertive about being at that table and not just wait to get stuff thrown at you.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, very good. Because that really ties into something that, you're also just launched a blog, the Transformational Technologist here, right? You just had a really good blog post on kind of what does IT mean and how you're, kind of presenting to people who are trying to get their MBAs or, in the School of Business and so forth and doing level 100 IT sort of stuff. So, very interesting article to read about what is the value of IT and kind of interesting to hear that sometimes IT doesn't even know the value of IT, right?
Yeah.
But, maybe talk a little bit about your, what you're trying to accomplish by presenting to, because it seems very weird that you'd be talking IT to accountants, right?
Yeah. So thanks for the plug, first and foremost. I came up with the blog because I felt there was this need. I think there's a lot of stuff out there that talks about like, IT business strategy, sort of CIO focused material. I think that exists, and there's a ton of blogs around the nuts and bolts technology. And let me be clear, I'm the wrong person to write that article, anyways, right? But there's a ton of that information out there. What was missing for me was in the middle for people that are trying to figure out how to move their career more into a management side or more into team leadership side, and might be struggling a little bit with that. I know I did. Right. When I got into IT, it was all about like, how good can you be with the technology? How good can you be? And again, coming up from desktop to server admin, it was progressive technology learning. And then one day it was like, I kind of looked up and I was like, actually, I can tell you the moment it happened. I was in a room with my second skip level manager, and I started talking about like an upgrade we were doing to Active Directory, and you could like see their eyes glaze over. And I was like, I'm not talking a language that this person cares about. Forget understanding.
Right.
They don't care, right? They don't care about Active Directory. What am I missing? And so I started spending some time reading and trying to learn their language a little bit. And pretty quickly, that's when it all started coming together. I was like, oh, why do we do this at all, right? And it turns out, right, and I'll just go off on this for a minute because I'm really passionate about it. The reason we have IT at all is not to keep the computers running, right? There's a reason we have the computers, and it's to make the organization more efficient and more effective. And that is a story that's been going since the dawn of time, right? So at some point, there was one merchant A and one merchant B, and merchant B figured out that if they could get their product to market faster, they could literally beat merchant A because they'd be on the scene first. So they figured out how to get there faster by hooking a cart with wheels up to a horse instead of carrying their stuff. They won. That was a technology story, right? And then you flash forward and it was like, okay, hey, I'm from Lowell, Massachusetts, and we have a bunch of mill buildings. And the reason that was so big was they figured out how to use canals and hydropower to power these mills and make textiles faster and cheaper. And that was the industrial revolution in the area. But now it's data analytics. Now it's getting your app out to market faster. Now it's being able to get insights that you couldn't otherwise get. And knowing that hopefully gives you some purpose about why you're configuring your storage array in a certain way to get higher IO, right? Because like it's easy to get focused on like, I need to maximize IO. Why? Well, because we need the data faster. Why? I don't know. Like, I don't know is not a good answer there. You need to be able to tie that back to the goals of the business, right?
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. When I read that, I mean, it literally struck home with me. I may have had this conversation with Matt before. I know I just had this conversation last week with my boss too. Is when I had to do this for a living, there were often times in an engineering role that I had no idea how the work I was doing that day tied off to a business challenge or a business goal. I knew that it went ahead and worked towards an IT issue that we were having, but I had no idea how that got tied back in. And I don't know whether it was my management or the telephone game. You hear it from one, like you got two or three people in between you, and then your plate gets filled up and you just want to clear your plate off. But I know that if I went back to an engineering role, right, from where I am now, I would be a totally different engineer. And a lot of it is exactly what you put in that blog post. I know that I would be asking those questions. Why am I doing this? How is this making the company better? How is this going to advance the company? So it was like timely, perfect. It was really a good read. I really enjoyed that. And that second question you had on there is what really kind of, I was like, this is it. This is exactly what I've been feeling.
Well, awesome. I mean, that makes me feel good that somebody got some value out of it. That's great. The thing for me is that I think we've done a disservice for folks entering the industry, and that we just pump them full of technology information. And I've seen people stagnate there, right? And it's like, oh, I learned all this technology stuff, and I'm having a hard time like moving. I've had people come up to me at user cons and say that, like, how do I make that next step? And I'm like, okay, how much time are you spending with your customers? And they're like, well, they just submit tickets and I do the thing. And I'm like, yeah, they don't know who you are. Right? Like your internal stakeholders don't know who you are, don't know the value you're bringing. You need to be able to communicate with them and in their language and show them that you are the person to connect business value to technology and can translate that. Because they're two different languages that effectively go to the same place.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Yeah. The other, I tell you, the other article that you wrote that I was got a lot of enjoyment out of it, and was the one where you talked about working from home, right? You hated it. You didn't like it. It was very frustrating. So that was written back early. It was like April, I think, right? I think you wrote that. So now here we are, late June. What's the experience now? Have you hit a routine? Has it gotten better for you? Are you still missing your office and missing everything? What's it like?
Yeah. So, in Massachusetts, we're still reasonably restricted here. We haven't fully opened up yet. So I'm still working from home, and it's tough. I still miss the office. I miss being able to walk around, and some of it is I do management by walking around. I literally walk around the office all day long. In fact, like, it is an active effort now to get I'm looking at my watch right now. It's an active effort to get my step count high enough to be like, it's like flashing at me like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Should I call an ambulance? And because I usually am, clocking in 14, 15,000 steps a day, just walking around the office and talking to people. And then, like, the first week home, it was like 5 seems like a low number. Like, that doesn't seem like enough. I miss it. I've come to accept it, as I think we all have. I'm certainly Zoom fatigue is real. Though, I mean, we're on Skype now, so this is just like a breath of fresh air.
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah, you bet. So it's okay, right? It's not what I want. I'm excited to get back to campus when we can, but obviously the health and well-being of our students, our faculty, my team is paramount. And so I will deal with some of the claustrophobia of being in the same room in my house for 21 hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It was a hard transition for me too, right? I was on the customer side for a long time, went into the office every day, and then here I am working in a home office, and it took some time. There's no question about it. You kind of have to really figure out a different routine every day. And now that we're, 100% work from home, it was another kind of a transition. So I can certainly feel your pain a little bit there. No question about it.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is, I mean, I think, I just saw, Dr. Fauci the other day was saying cautious optimism about an early 2021 vaccine, right? Hopefully this is temporary. We can get back to it. But I'm at a point now where I think if I had to do this for a year, I'd be okay. I notice how I had a hitch there when I said that. Like, I think I'd make it. It helps. So in fairness, for those of us in the northern latitudes, it helps that the weather has changed. Yeah. It helps that I can go outside and take a walk in the morning and listen to podcasts. And it was one thing when I've got a bunch of friends that live in the South, and like when this first happened in March, they're like, man, the only thing keeping me sane is that it's 70 and sunny here in San Antonio, Texas, and I'm like, it's 36 and raining.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah.
So it's better that it's warmer now, and we'll take it one day at a time.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's one last question here for you. Let's take a step back in time. It's 1998. Steve Athanas is working help desk. He's built out this nice desk with bookshelves and credenzas and everything. You're just kind of getting started out in IT, right?
Yeah. Yep.
If you could travel back in time, what would be one piece of IT technology that you would bring with you, not only to shoot your career into rock stardom, but also to completely change the face of IT?
Okay, wow, and completely change the face of IT that's a big piece, because what I was going to say was you need to make very good friends with the intern Matt that works with you and hitch your career to him. Like, that was my answer. Like, that was change the face of for those that don't know, Matt and I worked together all those years ago. But to change the face of IT, what's one piece of advice? Probably 1998. Just save up as much money as you can, dump it all into Apple, and then watch from the sidelines. Amazon stock. Yeah, no, in all fairness, I think the piece of advice that I would give is, because you're in 1998, you are pre-virtualization, pre-cloud, pre-software as a service. The web is really, really young. I would probably say learn coding better than you have, right? And use that. Don't give up on the infrastructure. Don't give up on that piece, but learn the coding, because there's going to be a point. And by the way, if I'm talking to me and in 1998. I'm like, go do this thing and be a hero. Merge those two things, because I think it took the industry too long to realize that you can use code to procedurally manage your workloads. Like, that took far longer than it should have. Like, we had everything in front of us. It was almost like having like a beef patty and lettuce and tomato and a bun and a piece of cheese and being like, this is a weird salad. Like, we had everything in front of us to make a hamburger, and we didn't do it for 20 years, right? So I think for me, I think that's I think that would be the piece of advice. Merge the code and the infrastructure, and you can do amazing things in ways that we never thought possible.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. I have one follow-up question too that I want to get in before we let you go. You're the president of VMUG, right? And you're certainly very passionate about how you work with that organization and what you're doing. And somebody that a lot of us look up to that have been longtime VMUG members and VMUG leaders, or previous VMUG leaders. How important is that organization to you? And you're at user cons, you're doing talks, you're making the rounds at VMworld and the leader lunch. And what's it like to be the VMUG president? How important is that to you? How passionate are you about the community?
Well, I do it for the private jet. VMUG Force One is an amazing aircraft, and it burns a lot of fuel, but it's worth it. No, look, VMUG to me is critically important, and it's important to me for two reasons. One, it provides the opportunity for people to connect with each other and share best practices and stuff that they've learned from actually doing it, which is, for me, the gold standard of technology information. You've been there, you've done it, you've been down that path, you know what's down there. What am I going to find when I walk down that path? Oh, I can tell you, right? Like, so now I know not to turn left, I know to turn right. I mean, these are all proverbial, but you get what I'm saying. So that community and connection is really important. The second one is, and for me, this is my story, it can accelerate your career. Full stop, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I was a VMUG member, and I started getting better at the technology by learning things, right? And then I got involved with being a leader, and I learned some project management and coordination and how to influence people, and I became a manager. And then, we started building the Boston VMUG up into something really big, and I started, being comfortable speaking in front of, a couple hundred people from stage, and then I was able to present better at work, and then they made me a director, right? So these things tie together. And then when I got on the board of directors for VMUG, it was more about managing your peers, right, and building consensus and setting strategy and direction. And then I got I also got an MBA, but then I got promoted to associate CIO, right? And so for me, VMUG is critically important because somebody else is on that path right now. I don't know who it is, right? It could be any one of the leaders that we have around the world, but somebody's on that path. If I was a member and I grew and I became a leader and I grew and I'm looking to expand and grow, and I've seen it time and time and time again. I'm talking to two people who've had this experience. I'm talking to people who have, you were a sysadmin somewhere in relative obscurity and you got involved with VMUG, and now you're in very visible, really cool positions at VMware, right? And I've seen it with other companies and other partners too. So to me, it's really important. Being the president is the highlight of my community career by far. I'll never top this. Hopefully I have another year left of this before they make me leave, but they'll have to take the jet back kicking and screaming because that's mine.
Right. Yeah, you do a great job. I mean, certainly VMUG has definitely been a launch pad for me. I'm sure Matt feels the same way, but I really believe that VMUG's in good hands. It was great to see you, become the president last year, and wish you all the best luck. And it's just really awesome that you're a big part of the community. You're very visible in it, and you're really a great champion for everybody that's within the community. So thanks for that.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. And if that really means the world to me. If anybody's listening and you haven't checked out some of the stuff that's going on at VMUG, if I could just give a quick plug,
Go for it.
vmug.com. All of our, just like everything else in the world, all our events this year are being done virtually. So you can check them out in floral print shorts and a Hawaiian shirt. If you like, you could do that anyways. There's no dress code at a VMUG. When they're back in person, you want to roll up in a Hawaiian shirt, you do that. But we would love to have you at one of our events. We have them all over the world. We have one in your time zone. Check it out, meet somebody. And like I say, every time I'm at a UserCon, you're going to get a ton of great information there. But the most important thing you get at a UserCon is the information of the person virtually sitting to your left and right, because they are going to help you in your career in ways that just taking in content never will.
Very good. Well, Steve,
Beautiful.
Geez, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Anytime you need somebody to come and blather on, I'm your guy.
Thank you, Steve. So, Dan, when we started this podcast, we set out to really try to explain what is cloud management. And I think Steve summed it up really well by saying that it's really about aligning their cloud needs with the business and taking, all these different priorities, looking at, is this solution going to meet the needs of the business? Is it going to run somewhere where it's serving the function and being within budget? But yet on top of that, I thought an interesting point he said is that compliance is more of a veto thing, right? You could build the best solution possible, but if it doesn't comply with the standards of the project, standards of the business, so forth, it's a no-go. So a lot of different levels here for us to explore, and certainly a lot of content that we could be producing here with the Cloud Management Monthly podcast. Just one last thing, really want to thank Steve Athanas. You can catch him on Twitter at Steve Athanas. He is also the president of the VMware User Group, so check out vmug.com to find a UserCon or find a group near you to get to know other technology professionals within this space as well. It's been a great program. Dan, you're a leader. I was part of the Boston team. Great experience, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's really a worthwhile thing. Get involved. If you're not, if you're just a member at this point, you want to get involved, reach out to your leadership group and see. They're always looking for help. If you need additional, information, you can always reach out to Steve too. He's really great for stuff like that. It was a pleasure having him on today.
It was, yeah. And be sure to check out his blog, transformationaltechnologist.com. Some really good reading there if you're looking to just take a step back from the technology side of things and just look at things from a different perspective. It's a really, really good blog. The articles are short, nice, quick reads. So be sure to check that out as well. So Dan, talk to me a little bit more. Let's go into what do we have planned for future episodes?
Yeah, I think what's going to be a lot of fun is we're going to start to incorporate more of the community into our shows. So if you're out there in the V community and you have a cloud management or a personal IT success story that you want to share with the V community, and you have a favorite recipe for a baked good or a main dish, maybe a dessert, some barbecue, or even a drink, head on over to Twitter, give us a follow at CM Monthly, and then send us a DM and let us know a little bit about your story. And if we select you, we're going to bring you on the show so that you can share your recipes for success. See that?
Oh, man. Bad dad jokes right there. I love it. If you've created any cool content using any of the vRealize suite and posted it possibly to the sample exchange, let us know. Reach out to us on Twitter at CM Monthly or visit our webpage, cloudmanagementmonthly.com, because we'd love to connect with you and hear your story about the dashboard, why you created it, and what it does for your organization, and maybe to make your life even easier. We'd love to hear from you, so please reach out.
Yeah, lots of creative people out there. There's already been so many good submissions. It'd be really great to highlight a few of them on the show, so looking forward to that also. Well, I think, Matt, that does it for the show today. It's been it's been really awesome. I had a lot of fun. Steve was a great guest, and if anyone wants to interact with me, I'm at Another Geek on Twitter. My YouTube can be found at vmin5.com. Matt, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm on the Twitter at vmspot, and same deal with the YouTube. We'll actually provide links below to visit Dan's YouTube channel, to visit mine, and how to reach us on Twitter. So thanks again, everybody. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter, CM Monthly, and also subscribe. Let us know that you're watching this content and that you want more of it. So subscribe, hit that like button, bell icon to know when we're releasing new episodes of Cloud Management Monthly. Dan, I think that's a wrap. Thanks so much to everybody for watching, and stay tuned for next month.
See you, everybody.
There he is.
Oh, why are we using Skype? Like, literally anything would be better. Like, my last Skype call, I had to dig out my password for Skype, which was in like a notebook covered in like Indiana Jones style Detritus. I'm like brushing it off, and I'm like, oh, here it is. And I type it in, and it's like, your last call was like August 10th, 2015. I'm like, and that's what it should have stayed, damn it. I missed the black shirt memo. Should I change into a black shirt?
No.
Would that fit your is that like for the dress code here?
No.
Is this where you tell me that we're already recording? Like, this was all laid down in the track.
Oh, it's already recording. There's no question about
God,
that.
it is recording, son of a... I'm not putting pants on for anybody. This look.
What were you drinking there?
Hold on, I really do need to mop that up. That is on the keyboard.
Go ahead.
Well, Bradford's what I'm left with. Gotta collaborate with somebody to check that box. And then Michael Dell retweeted me once, and I was like, oh my God, I finally made it in the world. And I was like, he's got like 600,000 followers. This is fantastic. And she goes, how many followers did you get out of that? And I went, well, none yet. And she's like, yep. And then went back to like washing the dishes, and I was just like, oh. I'm Steve Athanas, and I was conned into this.
Yeah.